You're very welcome to this Masters of Digital panel on unlocking the EU recovery through public sector transformation. I'm Jennifer Baker. I'm going to be your moderator for this session. We have some great speakers who are going to deal with this issue now. We have what is almost an unprecedented opportunity now to change through digitalization public sectors. And of course, with the recent, current and ongoing pandemic, we see that citizens are engaging much more with public bodies. And we want to talk about how the changes through the COVID pandemic may be leveraged, and maybe there's some sort of silver lining of coming out of this terrible situation. So joining me to talk about that, we have from DG Connect in the European Commission, Acting Director General Mario Campolago. We have Anton Ujcic, who is Deputy Director General at the Information Society and Informatics Directorate at the Slovenian Ministry of Public Administration. Ulrich Alla is the CEO of the Fireware Foundation. Vanda Jesus is Executive Director of Portugal Digital. And Michelle Isnaud is the Vice President of EMEA Sales at Red Heart. Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to today's discussion. I hope you will be able to engage with questions from our audience. I will remind the audience that you can ask questions in the chat function or do send us using the hashtag MOD2021, and we'll try to get those to our speakers. But for now, I'm going to start, Mario, with you with an opening question. So the EU has come a long way since the Malmo Declaration in 2009 in terms of government readiness to lead by example in terms of digitalization. So what are the main accomplishments since then, and what are the main stumbling blocks, please?
Hi, Jennifer, and hi, dear colleagues, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for this question, because actually you touch very much in a process that Europe is taking very seriously. Malmo 2009, Tallinn 2017. I think that both allowed us for Europe to take consciousness that the service that is provided by the public services should be service-oriented, reliable, and innovative, and this is fundamental for the definition of governmental services. Immediately after Malmo, there was a lot of steps towards the modernization of the public services, both nationally and across the borders. But I think that Tallinn recognized that there was another impetus that was necessary to do in terms of the digital transformation, both at national level and European level, and focusing in particular in all policy areas, putting the end users, the citizens, the business, the public sector employees truly at the center of the services, what you could link to the user centricity. Also, Tallinn called upon to go much beyond 2020, because it was very clear that the digitalization of the society was going to accelerate in this context. So what we can say is that those past declarations shaped, in my view, the transformation of the public services into what is normally called as e-government, following actually a very clear trend that was already emerging in the private sector and businesses. They certainly played a very important role, and I'm just going to mention three areas. For example, in the e-IDAS, so e-signatures and e-IDAS, on the once only principle that is so important for us not to be asked several times for the same information while we are citizens, and I would say in the interoperability. Now, what did we see since 2017 and the last 5 years? I would say a huge digital transformation of the whole society. And what did the COVID-19 pandemic did? It actually accelerated even more this digital transformation of all the societies. In my mind, I think that it accelerated going deeper and going broader, going wider. So certainly not for the best reasons, but this pandemic has shown very much the need for modern, for user-centric, for interoperable digital government services. And the response at European level couldn't be different. We focus on this resilience and recovery package, where digital is so important. 20% of this huge amount of 1.8 trillion are allocated for digital. And you saw last year, towards the end of the year, this various package on data that try to make sure that the digital technologies are used in a fair way, and that the market of digital is also more healthier, if I may say. What we believe is that at the level of the member states, we have the instruments to change our digital our organizations into digital organizations. The question that you may ask, Jennifer, is what type of transformation do we want to our societies? And that's where the CIOs of the governments come very, very clearly into the picture. And the fact that we have been able to have a declaration during the German presidency, the so-called Berlin Declaration. And if you see to the title, is a Berlin Declaration on digital society and value-based digital government. So first we go from the notion of e-government to digital government, and we link it very much to the society and to the values in Europe. So I find that this is amazing and sets the scene for a big step forward in terms of the right way to transform our organizations in the public sector.
Thank you. Now, Anton, you heard that Mario did mention funds. So I'd like to ask you, what are Slovenia's spending priorities for the recovery and resilience funds, and how much of that and what sort of proportion are we looking at in terms of digitalization?
Dear colleagues, thank you for inviting us to the conference, and thank you for this pleasant introduction. I have to apologize our minister, Mr. Koritnik, and State Secretary, Mr. Gershak, for not attending the conference due to COVID-19 reasons. But I hope that I will be able to provide some information about Slovenia digitalization priorities in the recovery and resilience plan. First, when we are talking about the recovery and resilience plan, we have in mind that reforms included in this plan are focused on higher resilience of whole society and the whole economy to the modern challenges, such as an epidemic like this or other big threats. So we plan to develop and use the modern ICT infrastructure to provide more innovative digital services, provide greater interoperability of IT systems and data exchange in order to reduce paperwork and speed up administrative procedures. This will also contribute to increased number of service users, better user experience, and competitiveness of the economy. We will reduce the digital divide and give greater importance to new technologies that enable human-centered development, enable accessibility, better e-services, and increase the digital quality of life. By this, we mean providing affordable internet, quality of internet access and broadbands, providing IT infrastructures, e-government services, and of course, cybersecurity services as well. We will strengthen the quality of strategic management of state investments, quality of development and implementation of ICT services at the level of state administration in order to increase efficiency, project effectiveness, interinstitutional cooperation, unifying technologies, and increase trustworthy in e-services, and with this a greater number of e-services users. So this reforms we develop in two different ways, or two ways. First reform is so-called horizontal reform, in which we will make public administration ready for a digital future. These are the basic enabling conditions for success. In here we plan to we will do establishment of new generation of information infrastructures, development of dynamic horizontal services, modernization of the customer support system as one of extremely important area, and strengthening and upgrading the cybersecurity. On the basis of this horizontal reform, which will establish enabling conditions, we are preparing an additional reform. This is digital transformation of public administration sectors, where all ministries step towards digitalization and develop their own modern sector-specific information systems or sector-specific e-services. This will include ministries from internal security, education, science, sport, labor and social markets, space environment, healthcare, agriculture, and so on. Currently, we are in the paperwork or in the design phase of reforms and investments, and we are trying to follow the time frame defined by the EU Commission. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Wanda, let me move on to you now. We spoke a little bit about the COVID-19 pandemic already, but Portugal's digital strategy back in 2009 is an example of sort of never waste a good crisis, always be innovating and use crisis points to develop further. So in what way is 2020, 2021 similar to that sort of inflection point? And what do you think that the EU as a whole could learn from the Portuguese experience, particularly now as the presidency holders of the European Council?
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm so honored to be part of this great panel. So back to your question, back in 2010, Portugal launched effectively the Digital Agenda 2015. At that time, it was organized in 5 different lines of action, a lot based in the IT infrastructure indeed. But times have changed a lot. And although more than infrastructure, and we need really great computation power, and it's now critical more than ever. We believe that the central role has changed and shifted from skilling and reskilling and the importance of the digital inclusion of our population. Very interesting to see is that one thing I'm hearing my feedback. Sorry. One thing is interesting that the digital agenda from Portugal this time, it was a big bet from the government since the beginning. So when it started in November 2019, it's the first government that has an organic, dedicated Secretary of State for the country's digital agenda, with the second figure of the state, the Ministry of Economy, as the Ministry of Economy and Digital Transformation. So following this, in February 2020, so 2 weeks for us before the first confinement, it was indeed presented our action plan for digital transformation. And it was created, Portugal Digital, the agency and the structure that I'm now leading. What it's interesting to see is that the pandemic arrival just proved the urgency and the relevance of everything that was written, but it didn't change. So we just enhanced and get more velocity to it. With a big worry that we have in our hands, that we must ensure that no one is left behind. And indeed, at the end, it's all about the people. For Portugal, our ambition is now to emerge from what probably we have been seen lately as a startup nation to a digital nation, alongside with Europe, of course. So in our view, the digital needs to cover all the dimensions of the society, as Mario was saying, believing, and we strongly believe in a planned disruption. So we created the plan based on 3 pillars. So people, that is skilling and reskilling and lifelong learning cycle and inclusion. Businesses, so the digital transformation of businesses. And the third and lastly, but what we are also discussing here today, but nothing can seen alone, the digitalization of public administration, which, of course, in our case, brings together everything that has already been done greatly with the modernization ministry, with the social security, and so on. And then back to also your question, to go directly with 4 things that we are doing that I think might be interesting to share with all of you. So we have a program on skilling that we call Upskill, that is a reskill program for specialized training program for the digital area. So our ambition is to have 3,000 unemployed, bringing in the field of information technology. I think the disruptive idea of this program was that in partnership with the hiring companies from the private sector, we created the areas of expertise needed. And the schools developed the courses according to their needs. And then with the support of the Employment Institute of Portugal, so a program has 6 months of scholarship and then 3 months working on the job in the companies. At the end, they are hired by the companies. Interesting to note that even during the pandemic, so we started with 430 in October, so they will be ending in late April, and we are planning to bring this program to life also for the public officers with the agreement of the government. The second one is the cloud strategy. Very interesting. Today is we are having an event also on the cloud strategy that was approved in the beginning of January, 11th of January, and we all know, I believe, in this panel, how important it is and the importance that cloud computing has in the potential to accelerate the response of the public administration towards the challenges of an increased digital society, not only because it allows to accelerate the availability of new services, but also allows it to do so in a more effectively rational and safety way, scaling our investments. So we believe it's really relevant to have this cloud strategy approved. Another thing, and the third, it's bringing to life a national smart cities strategy. And for this, I have the honor to be having the support of DG Reform that we hope can help us address the concerning issues that we have integrated the planning regarding the smart cities implementation, optimization of the public expenditure, and escalating at a national-wide level small-scale pilots that we have been having. And of course, providing an interoperability framework and common principles that can be applied to all the smart cities. Of course, if we are doing this for Portugal with the help, we of course believe that this clear smart cities view should be seen for all the European cities as we are together. And lastly, regarding the connection with the public service, public e-government and the government digital with entrepreneurship, we believe that today we are more than the country of the Web Summit. We have a highly vital entrepreneurship ecosystem, but we really think that we have to fight for an entrepreneurial Europe with a vibrant ecosystem in Europe. The importance of this entrepreneurship is a critical factor in the transition to a new economy model based on knowledge and innovation. So we are very proud to have in Portugal the signature of the European Startup Standards in the next Digital Day that will be held in the 19th of March during the Portuguese presidency, for which you are of course all invited.
Thank you very much, Wanda. If only we could be there in person, that would be the greatest thing, of course. Let me turn to you, Ulrich. Obviously, Wanda mentioned smart cities there, but I want to talk about, the FIWARE Foundation has shown that with consortia working together from an open source perspective, that a lot can be delivered in terms of making administrations faster, better, greener. So talk to me a little bit about how that could move forward, particularly in light of the recovery funds that are available in the EU at the moment.
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me here to this panel. And you're right, FIWARE has really been a success story. It started back in 2011 in the Future Internet public-private partnership, and after an investment of more than 500 million euro into the development of the technology and the creation of the ecosystem, the FIWARE Foundation was created end of 2016. That was a time when I entered this ecosystem coming from the market, because one of the main targets of the foundation is not only to further develop this technology, but to bring it to market adoption, to bring it to cities, to bring it to farmers and different verticals where this technology is used. And in the meantime, FIWARE is the global open source standard when it comes to creating smart cities. So not only in Europe, but also in Japan, in South America, in Africa, starting also in the US now. And before coming to your question, what the European Commission could do, let me give you a short example from India. When Prime Minister Modi was elected for the first time, it was back in 2014, he started quite soon the 100 Smart Cities program, investing some billion US dollar or compared to rupees into this program. The big global consulting companies supported the cities in creating their smart city strategy, brought first tenders to the market, guided the first implementation projects. And 2 years ago, the Indian government and the responsible Ministry for Housing and Urban Affairs suddenly identified each city has built its own silo. There are only limited synergy effects between the different cities. The wheels has been invented several times, and the public funding could have been spent more efficiently. And this was one of the tipping points when they decided we need to provide more guidance and more governance to the projects within the different end users, in this case, in the different cities. And this was the moment when I met for the first time the Minister for Housing and Urban Affairs, who is responsible for this 100 Smart Cities program. The first meeting was in a panel organized by the World Bank. And when he heard our story, the same night we had a meeting in the ministry. And since 1.5 years, the 5R Foundation, together with partners from its ecosystem, is supporting the creation of what is called now the India Urban Data Exchange Platform. It is a standard smart city platform, standard APIs, standard data models, partly using also 5R technology, but not only 5R technology. But the core message is really standard APIs, standard data models. And this will now be rolled out to India. And coming back to the question, what could the European Commission do, is to provide more guidelines to avoid the creation of silos and to be able to generate more synergy effects between the different countries of the European Commission. And coming to your question, whether the recovery fund could help us and could be a tipping point for using more digital solutions to, on the one side, achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, but on the other hand, also to improve the quality of life of people living in the cities and in the regions. I'm convinced there is a lot of potential, and these recovery funds will be used for it. And on member state level, they are used already. The 5R Foundation is headquartered in Germany, and back in June, the German government brought its first recovery fund already to the market. 500 million euro were simply used and spent or brought into the program called Smart Cities Made in Germany, helping Germany to close the gap to the leading countries in Europe. Because when it comes to digitization of public services, Germany is not leading. There's a gap of at least 5 years. And these 500 million from the recovery fund will be used to close this gap with a clear guideline to use open source technology. That is the guideline given in this fund. The ministry doesn't want to go so far to give also guidelines for common APIs and common data models, but I'm pretty sure there will be a learning curve, and also this guidelines to spend the money more efficiently will be implemented in the future.
Thank you, Ulrich. I'm struck by what you said about efficient public spending. So often in these panels, when we're talking of private, we talk about making the business case, but I think coming back to efficiency has got to be one of the measures we talk about today. Michel, let me ask you about more or less the same question. I mean, how can open source avoid the sort of siloing that Ulrich mentioned?
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, and good morning to all the other panelists. Well, let me start by asking you all, is there a different way than going open source? As a European citizen, I am asking the question, can we work together? Can we build a network and not a fortress? When I look at the younger generations, the way they live, I cannot see a stronger and better fit than open source to such a way of living, sharing, collaborating, and innovating. When I look at my kids, I see that life is open, and open is life, actually. And with regards to the union, again, I see a great fit with this mantra that we have in open source, not Red Hat, open source, a bigger picture, which is we are stronger together. We are stronger when we share. Because we have seen in countless Red Hat engagements with private and public sector organizations, as well as non-governmental organizations right across the globe, that when open source code and the principles are adopted, not just in how the software is developed and utilized, but how the organization is structured, led, and how decisions are made transparently and inclusively, then we really do witness innovation right ahead of us. I mean, we know that open source and innovation are tightly connected. From a Red Hat perspective, this collaboration takes place inside and outside our company, across teams, across geographies, across time zones, genders, religious beliefs, age, sexual orientation, you name it. This is the definition of open at big scale. And it is, according to me, the ultimate alternative to siloed thinking. Let me give you one example, which maybe will illustrate what I'm saying. In November of last year, Red Hat worked with the World Health Organization, WHO, with regards to the pandemic. And with the COVID-19 data refreshing almost daily, not to say continually, health workers need to stay on top of the most up-to-date and accurate information. We have been collaborating with them through what we call an open innovation lab. And the WHO team worked collaboratively with Red Hat experts within this lab. What they did is that they have been sharing or integrating people, practices, and technologies to increase agility in the development of software and products, in catalyzing innovation and solve internal challenges in an accelerated time frame. When I listen or read what the Chief Information Officer of the WHO, Bernardo Mariano, has given us as a feedback, I mean, it's just music to my ears. He said, working with Red Hat Open Innovation Labs provided a more flexible and responsive approach for creating solutions using open source technologies. We, WHO, were able to build a DevOps platform that can not only deliver relevant, timely COVID-related information and knowledge to health workers globally, but one that can also scale and adapt to their future needs. The Digital Europe Master of Digital Conference has really touched on digital sovereignty a number of times yesterday, and the power of open source to realize this objective. Indeed, we see this developing in a number of public sector customers, many of whom are dealing with very highly sensitive data and mission critical. For example, the likes of BSI in Germany, ANSSI in France, OCSI in Italy, mandate for digital sovereignty and protecting data, of course, and at the same time allowing their fellow ministries to collaborate, which is very, very important. I think that open source, maybe it's a paradox, is bringing more digital sovereignty than any other technology, because it's open, and because it's open, everybody can see what will be done with the data. Last but not least, let's talk about talent management, which is one of the big challenges of our countries and the union. When the standards and legal framework have been developed to support the bigger picture with interoperability that I heard from all of the previous speakers, including people, processes, and technology, this helps to attract technically skilled people into the public sector, facilitates a freer movement of these people to help drive innovation across multiple agencies and departments.
Thank you. I see we've got a lot of questions coming in already for our panelists, so we will turn to those in just a moment. But first, I'm going to turn the tables and ask the audience a question. We have a poll here. I'd just like to get a sense. How many of you have accessed public services digitally within the last month? So have you accessed public services? Have you used the internet to do that? Please do respond to that. We should have a little poll option appearing on your screen very shortly so you can vote on that, and we will come back and have a look at the results in due course. Mario, I'm going to turn to you now. You heard there Ulrich and many others asking, what can the Commission do? And I know Digit is involved in trying to help member states. So how do you deal with some member states being way ahead, some maybe falling behind, and what can you do in encouraging everyone to level up, as it were? You're on mute.
Jennifer, thanks very much for the question, but allow me one short reference to some of my previous colleagues. First, Ulrich, fantastic presentation and very good work on the 5R, and I'm so glad because I was with some of the colleagues in the Commission at the essence of this program, and I'm so flabbergasted with the fact that the open source approach, the suite that you offer for digital cities, the integration through APIs, open APIs, is so powerful that we mimic it also in the area of the digital government. And we are already doing this in the past in the ISA program. We are building the standard components that can be used and reused by the member states, thus helping the ones that are possibly less advanced to faster advance quickly. We are making programs to integrate startups, and I'm very glad that Wanda mentioned Portugal as a startup nation and the move to a digital nation. We have encouraged a lot of startups to use the building blocks that we have developed at European level in open source and build with them some products that can fall into the market, be it for public sector or for private sector. So there is a definitely need for the governments. Digital governments, administrations cannot by definition develop all the services that the citizens and business need. The acceleration of the needs from the citizens, the innovation drive from citizens is not commensurate with the limited investments that we have at the level of the public organizations. So they have to associate to them this startup ecosystem to develop, and more, because the startup ecosystem will be able to sense the needs of the users, be it business or citizens, in probably a much more proxy way than the administrations that are heavy and a little bit institutional on that front, and therefore provide services that are more adequate. So from our point of view, we opt to support from open source the building blocks. We invest in the Digital Europe program that tries to bring the innovation from the research into the practice. There is a particular volley into public administrations, very, very important. Data spaces for public administrations, trying to look to the European sovereign cloud that Wanda mentioned. So important. We have the hyperscalers that are very good. Europe is not so advanced, but can you use the procurement power of the public administrations to develop this notion of sovereign clouds in Europe? This is an objective for all of us. It will not be achieved, no matter how big is your country, will not be achieved independently. And then the skills, working with the skills. I know that, Anton, in the next presidency of Slovenia, you put a particular focus on skills. So that's absolutely fundamental for everybody and also for the public sector.
Thank you, Mario. I think you've slightly answered one of the questions from an audience member, Sebastian Lasse, who's asking, what is the strategy for funding open source software and supporting open protocols? So I think you've touched that. Did you want to elaborate any further on the funding side?
We just announced an open source strategy just in November. Yeah. I mean, and we say it when we talk to people. This is to make sure that the Commission develops open source as a lifestyle. I mean, when we develop our websites, we use Drupal. When we develop all our components for e-government, we use open source. We foster interoperability. How do we finance them? Through the Digital Europe program. There is a lot of other programs in the research domain that will finance that, but when it comes to support the public administrations, the Digital Europe program is fundamental. Now we need to cluster the Digital Europe program with a massive investment in the Recovery and Resilience Fund. That's where the member states will have the resources to foster the adoption of new solutions, and new solutions should be, as much as possible, developed in open source.
Michel, do you want to elaborate on this as well? This is a question from our audience member about how to fund open source software and support open protocols.
So with regards to how we are trying to enable a vast quantity of people, we are working quite a lot with universities. We have our academic program. We are also working a lot in communities. We contribute to communities, and I would say, fundamentally implement on a daily basis those guiding principles of open source. We are 100% following all of these principles, and we every time, for instance, my team is selling a solution to a customer, I make this recommendation to the customer: you should yourself dedicate people to supporting, contributing to the communities, because at the end of the day, it is important that the customers, the users, are autonomous in using this technology. The beautiful thing that Mario said is that there is so much innovation ahead of us that there is not a single company which can answer all of these needs. And therefore, again, the principle of open source, where we can have as many contributors as people want to contribute, is really the answer to this fantastic challenge that we all have. So we need a lot of brains and people and passionate people into this field.
Ulrich, the same question to you, but perhaps also taking into account other pan-European projects like the Gaia-X project, that we've heard so much about in this conference.
Yeah, Gaia-X, we heard yesterday Hubert Tadieu as the interim CEO. By the way, Hubert is or was the main initiator of the 5R Foundation. 5 years ago, he started this process together with 4 European companies, and I did my first interview with Hubert when applying for this position. And Hubert has been also chairman of the board of directors of the 5R Foundation until 1 year ago, when he started with a new hobby to create Gaia-X. And to make really Gaia-X reality and the data spaces which will be created on top of Gaia-X, it is important to have trust in this environment. Trust which will be brought by data sovereignty. And this is an ingredient which mainly comes from another organization which is called IDSA, International Data Spaces Association, where I'm also a founding member and member of the board. But this is not sufficient. It is necessary, but not sufficient. And what we need to make data spaces reality is what I explained before: standard APIs, standard data models, and maybe taking, if you allow me, Jennifer, taking one of the questions here from the audience, it is also to take the people with you, to create trust and acceptance on the people, because without people using this technology, using these platforms, using these data spaces, it will not work. And we have clearly differences between the European member states when it comes to the acceptance of digital solutions, and cases where we can learn from each other. For example, looking at Estonia, Mario, you mentioned the Tallinn Declaration, the once only principle, and the main principle that the data belong to the citizens, not to any other organization. The citizens are the owners of the data. And this creates trust. They have transparency, what's happening with their data. And we can learn a lot from what is going on in Estonia and what happened there over the last 20 years in their digital transformation journey.
Thank you. I'm going to actually pick up on that question, but first I'll give you our poll results. It seems that 85% of our audience has accessed public services digitally within the last month. Only 15% haven't. So that's really quite a large percentage. So I don't think that's surprising, but I think it does underline the importance of making it seamless and efficient and effective, as well as green and sustainable. Now, we have a question here from Clara Lemaire, who asks the question, what do you see as essential conditions to establish data-driven governments? Is it just a matter of culture and skills, or should infrastructure and standards take priority? Anton, I think perhaps you could address this question also that Ulrich raised of trust, a lot of which is dependent on, should we say, infrastructural and software security as well as anything else.
It's from my side, it's a short answer. It's a matter of skills and talents, and no about the infrastructure and technology. We already did some beautiful examples in Slovenia, and the result was always the same. It's about the people involvement and the skills they have.
Okay, and Wanda, the same question to you. Do you think it's about skills, or is it about infrastructure and standards?
Oh, for sure it's about skills. Yes, completely agree. Yeah.
Okay. We also want to have a question from an audience member. If I can find it here.
Yeah.
Yes. Paulo Costa, specifically to you, is what areas of the Portuguese strategy would you like other countries to replicate? Or on the other hand, what initiatives or projects would you like to introduce into the Portugal public sector?
So thank you, Paulo, for the question. I would go directly with two things that my colleagues of the panel have already referred: the importance of the open frameworks and the interoperability that have to be driven centrally, and we really have to understand how to use it and to bring together. And the other thing that was just referred, it's the data space. So we have to have a coherent and a strategy to use the data, to bring the data together, not to be afraid. So create trust base for this to be shared. So I think these two things are the most relevant, connecting with the question that was just made.
Thank you. Okay, so I have another question. I have a poll question for our audience. I'm also going to ask our panelists to answer this one for me as well. It's how important is open innovation in the public sector to accelerating Europe's recovery? It's the whole topic of this panel, but audience members, you will have a scale. So from 1 to 5, 1 is not at all important and 5 is very important. So please do vote now, because we want to get those results before we break for lunch. Mario, what is it, 1 to 5? Is it very important or not important?
I would say that is crucial, because the different world in what we live today, where and I link myself, if you allow, Jennifer, to the question about the data. The public administrations were a perfect example where we believed that data belonged to my ministry or to my policy. And as Anton said, it belongs to the citizens and to the business. But it's a culture problem, but it's not just a culture, because then comes, for example, the sovereign cloud solutions, the sovereignty. I mean, the infrastructure has to ensure the compliance with GDPR, etc. But so the world is different today. We will not be able to develop services without talking, without having this proximity. So open innovation includes this design thinking. Essentially, Wanda could have picked also on the points of the live event approach that Portugal uses and so many other countries use. So we center our relation with the user on what makes sense for them. So open innovation encapsulates this, the ability to talk to the citizens. You know, let me give just for a second a reference to the Conference of Future of Europe, where we want to listen. What Europe do we want to get? And for that, we the traditional way, we have a lot of agoras where we would debate this. Today, we can do this digital agoras, and it's not by accident that we adopt, for example, of an open source solution that will be underlying these discussions and the possibility for citizens to engage in this discussion, voting in projects, in ideas, and all that. So here you see open innovation at the service of linking Europe to the citizens, like public administrations to the citizens in the member states.
Thank you, Mario. Anton, the question, how important is it on a scale of 1 to 5? The same question to you, I can guess, I think, what you're going to say. And then briefly to wrap up, tell us a little bit about the Slovenian priorities for the upcoming presidency.
Yes. So At the moment, we are in preparing for a presidency, and we see artificial intelligence as one of the main point of our presidency. For Slovenia, artificial intelligence is very important because of the history. We have more than 40 years of research experience, more than 30 years of higher education experience in the field of artificial intelligence, and a great number of experts doing this business. So currently, Slovenia is preparing the national program for artificial intelligence, and this national programs has a vision of transferring existing knowledge of artificial intelligence in human trustable solutions while ensuring the national cultural identity. Slovenia is committed itself to creating an attractive environment for artificial intelligence professionals to work maybe in Slovenia and creating favorable conditions for foreign investments. During our presidency, we will actively work on Artificial Intelligence Act, which is expected to be published in first quarter of this year. September 2021 will be a month of artificial intelligence. During that period, several events and activities on AI will be organized in Slovenia, including a showroom on these topics. On the September the 14th, we plan to organize a conference on AI, where we will introduce some results of and experience on this work. And this conference will be also the opportunity to discuss about important issues regarding artificial intelligence with the famous scientists working on this field.
Thank you. I'm going to have to stop you there because I want to give my other panelists a quick chance to wrap up. Ulrich, what do we think we need going forward to drive Europe's recovery and digitalization?
Yeah, coming back to the question of open innovation, I think any other result than 5 very important would be a surprise to me. And this is also very important for the design of our 5 ecosystem. We need, on the one side, big and large global corporates like Atos, like NEC, like Red Hat, who joined us last year. But on the other hand, we also need startups, innovative young companies, bringing up new ideas, new solutions to even increase the usage of digital solutions to help us to improve our environment, to create resilient cities, to help us to cope with the effects of COVID-19. And the combination of startups, small and medium-sized companies with global companies, I think this is very important because we need these global companies for scaling to bring solutions to the global scale. And this combination will make us even more successful as Europe, but also as a 5 ecosystem, I'm pretty sure.
Thank you. And Wanda, your thoughts. What do we need coming up in the years to come? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. So connecting with what the Slovenian presidency that will follow us, and the very interesting is that we are preparing, I hope, the basis for the artificial intelligence that will come from the Slovenians, because we cannot have it without the basic ingredients of AI, that is data, connectivity, and trust. So based on this, I would say in terms of the presidency of the Portuguese, that working in the connectivity and the open platforms, we believe that expanding direct connectivity links with other continents and markets projects, it's a paramount to ensure the competitiveness and resilience of Europe. Namely, what we have just discussed, the European Federated Cloud as the Gaia-X project that has been so talked. And we will have the inauguration of the submarine cable, Link, on the 2nd of June during the Digital Assembly that will tie up Europe to South America and Africa as a good example for it. So, but we have to bear in mind that for these projects to succeed, we really need to ensure that they are done at the European level rather than in an initiative of one or two countries. And also during the presidency, we will be discussing the European Data Gateway Platform Strategy, a non-paper, a call to action to undertake a full assessment of the current submarine cable systems in the EU and the connection with the other infrastructures of this matter. And lastly, and not least, we believe that, and we will target this also in the discussion in June, that Europe can sometimes be seen as an old continent. To fully reap the benefits of these cutting-edge technologies and become a digital force, we need to change. We need to change this dramatically. So, to position Europe as the European way of doing business, we really believe that following the Berlin Declaration, we have to be most targeted on creating, and we are working on that, the signature of the Lisbon Declaration that will be based on a digital democracy with a purpose.
But I'm going to have to cut you off there because we're going over time. I think you make your point, and we can refer to the website for more details of what's coming up. Michel, I'm going to give you the last word very briefly. As an executive of Red Hat, a global company, what do you see from other parts of the world and other regions for Europe?
Well, I see a lot. We have a lot of customers across the world in all of the geographies. Could it be Latin America? Could it be Asia, India, Japan? I mean, you name this. But really, what I have heard this morning from our colleagues, and just referring to Anton and Vanda for Slovenia and Portugal, I have heard a lot of strong initiatives launched in each of the countries of the Union. And I have heard very often the same themes coming back. One is all of this is going to work when it is really taking care of the people and it is taking care of the skills they need to be able to leverage this technology, and in particular, open source technologies. The second theme that I've heard many, many times is about interoperability of the solutions, of the platforms, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel many, many times. Ulrich has been very clear on this, and I think there is no need to reinvent the wheel once more. The third thing that I have heard is that we have just ahead of us a fantastic challenge. This pandemic has created a lot of damages, has put the societies upside down, and with or through a digitalized approach, we can very likely, we have what we need in Europe. We can face this challenge and exit it in a successful way. The last thing, and I think this is really what we need in Europe, is a true collaboration, and not acting in sort of chapels or fortresses, but really joining forces. Gaia-X is a good example of what countries can do together. We don't know the outcome yet, and it will be what the people will do with it. But if we think in terms of business services, potentially even more than infrastructure or products, we will be able to give to all of these countries and citizens in Europe an outstanding possibility to have a better living. When we talk about what we do also in Europe, I mean, I think it is extremely important to look at what Mario and his colleagues at the EU level are doing to define policies, funding projects, building products, which in turn will foster the creation of ecosystems and markets, and will create some additional wealth to Europe. Fireware also is an excellent example of the
Michelle, I'm going to have to wrap you up as well because we've crashed the lunch break by 5 minutes and no one will thank us for standing in the way of their lunch. But thank you very much to all of you. I have to also give the poll results. It will not surprise you at all that 0 people thought that innovation in the public sector was not important and 53% thought it was extremely important. And in between we have 33 and 14% saying it was pretty important as well. So that will come as no surprise to anyone. Thank you, Mario, Anton, Ulrich, Wanda, and Michelle for your insights. I'm sorry we ran out of time and didn't get to all the questions, but there is a lunch break happening now. And I should tell you that there are 2 podcasts in the side stage. The first from Siemens Healthineers on shaping the future of healthcare. And following that, one from Johnson & Johnson using data science to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. And Microsoft will be live in their expo booth as well, talking about how a company becomes carbon negative. So please take this opportunity to check out those booths, and we hope to see you back for more panels, discussions, and the Unicorn Awards here at Masters of Digital this afternoon.
Thank you.